Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1, GV, Whiskey 1, Good Vibrations. Here to just talk a little more about circular polarization, and one thing that you have to be absolutely certain of if you and the person on the other end of the airwaves decide to both use circular polarization on a line of sight. The senses have to agree. Now, we talked about clockwise and counterclockwise, right-handed and left-handed circular polarization. This looks like right-handed to me, and it'll look like left-handed to you, and vice versa. But there's one thing very important that you have to take into consideration, and that is that the sense of the polarization of the transmitter has to agree with the sense of the polarization of the receiver, or you're going to have a real problem, the same sort of problem that you'd have on a line of sight with horizontal and vertical polarization. They're going to oppose each other, and you don't want that. The easiest way to think of this is to imagine yourself as the transmitting station, transmitting circular polarization in the right-handed sense. That means it goes sort of like a right-handed screw. As you turn a right-handed screw in, and almost all screws in the United States are right-handed. Interesting stories about left-handed screws in wartime. Think of your polarization as a right-handed screw. As the wave recedes from you, the electric lines of flux rotate round and round clockwise, just as the head of the screw recedes from you, you must turn the screw clockwise. If you're going to turn this screw, and if it's kind of like a bolt, imagine it as a bolt that goes into a nut, and the receiver is the nut, not the kind that's nutty in the head, but the kind that goes onto a bolt. If the circular polarization of that nut agrees with the circular polarization of the threads on the bolt, you're in luck. The nut will go onto the bolt easily. That's the same thing as circular polarization agreeing between transmitter and receiver, whether it be right-handed, left-handed, whether you look at it from the point of view of the receiver or the transmitter. If the nut goes on the bolt, you've got a good contact. But if the nut is of the opposite sense, say you take a nut that's designed for a left-handed screw, like they would use to fool people into thinking they were disarming a bomb when they were really arming it. Let the wartime reader or viewer understand. If they don't agree, you're going to have a significant loss between transmission and reception. The senses of the polarization will oppose, and you'll have upwards of 30 dB loss in your communications link. You don't want that. Interesting things happen to circular polarization between satellite and ground level communications. You always have to make sure that you've got the right sense of circular polarization. And the easiest thing I can recommend in practice to you, if you're trying to make a contact using circular polarization and you can't seem to do it, switch to the other sense and try it then. It's kind of a weird situation when you get into circular polarization on a direct line of sight. That's why circular polarization is used generally only when linear polarization just is not a good alternative. In the case of satellites, in the case of the ionosphere, circular polarization has definite advantages. But should the senses not agree, should you be trying to disarm a bomb and end up arming the bomb instead, well, you know the rest of the story. Stangibelisco W1GV saying 73, which means best regards, and regardless of polarization, in my native fist, translates to da-da-da-da-da-da.